Hello ladies and gentlemen, GabeStah here. This is the Gold Challenge Mode guide for Shadowmoon Burial Grounds. And I would say this zone is generally somewhere in the middle in terms of overall difficulty to achieve gold on this. It has a few difficult pulls, but most importantly just the DPS requirement throughout the entire zone can be quite severe. So you will have to really maximize your damage to really meet the requirement. In addition, it will generally require a skip of some sort. So generally this will be invis potions, unless you have access to a rogue in your group that can do a group stealth, which will save you a lot of damage because you can potion throughout the rest of the zone. So with that, let's rewind and we'll go through everything that's going on. Alright, so we'll try 100% playback for most of this. We may have to slow it down a few times to get enough time to talk about what's going on. When you start off, you'll just have the 3-pack Shadow Mender plus some Ritual Bones. Try to interrupt the Shadow Mend ability for the Bone Mender. In fact, we missed it there, so that's a mistake that shouldn't happen. But otherwise, this is kind of just an introductory pack to many of the pulls that you will face later on. Once the Bone Mender himself is dead, you can drag the Ritual Bones with you to the next pack and not really have to worry about killing them off. So this next part, your direction will be based on where the Void Spawn is going. So you just want to go the opposite direction that the Void Spawn is going there. Now, unfortunately, what this means is that sometimes there will be a Void Spawn that's hanging out with this pack here. So you'll always get the Loyalist and the 3 Defiled Spirits, but on occasion you may or may not get a Void Spawn. I don't know what causes it, and unfortunately from one attempt to the next we weren't able to figure out what it is, but it means that the mob count that you will achieve going through the zone will differ based on that random element. Regardless, if you do have a Void Spawn, make sure you interrupt it. That's the first and foremost thing, because its AE damage will be very deadly. And once both it and the other caster are dead, you can pull the remaining mobs up to these small spiders, as you see here. And just, take advantage of your cleave damage and your dot damage to finish things off. Be careful of your pets when you drop down. Desummon them if you need to. Again, aggro these spiders, little guys, they don't do anything, and drag them to the next pack. This one is the same on either side, so you got the Bone Mender and then again 3 skeletons. So just do your best to interrupt the Bone Mender heal and cleave down the skeletons. Do watch the skeletons facing, they do have a cleave, so you have to be careful of that for melee. But otherwise this pull is pretty simple. Now you can start dragging these forward, but unless you have a lot of range DPS, moving them too much is not really going to benefit you that much, because it will be difficult for your melee to be constantly attacking as they move. So we just found it better just to finish them off. Meanwhile, our healer, she ran ahead so that she could start drinking inside the room, so that by the time we all got here, we were ready to pull. This first boss is generally the same as Heroic, but the damage is pretty severe, so you have to be very careful that you handle the knives, the daggers, and the spawns, the adds that she brings out as well. So for initial positions, we sort of stay out to the side, wait for that first dagger set to come down, so it's somewhere on the outside ring, and then pull her away. Now, depending on your luck, again, there's some randomness here. You may get a dagger set again, the second dagger set before this ad spawns, and then you may get the ad before the dagger set. It just depends on, what's going on there. So what we do is wait for the ad to be killed, and then we'll bring her back in the middle once she ports in for this, special buff thing. As in Heroic, just stand on one of the small circle moons around the outside, get the buff, then you're free to move about. At this point, just try to stay near the edge, stack up players as much as possible, at least your range and your melee in 2 different groups, so that you're not getting too many daggers in weird places. For the second ad, we're just ignoring it, and I'm going to solo it with my limited DPS and Death Touch, or Touch of Death rather, so that your DPS can stay on the boss. It's worth noting that the mobs that she spawns during this fight do count for enemies killed for the challenge mode. So again, just like the void spawn that may or may not be active when you do the second pull of the zone, this will also be a random element that you can somewhat control, however, to dictate your total mob count, which can change things for you. So if your DPS is much higher, you may only get one spawn during this fight, and therefore your enemy count could be as low as 12 at this point, whereas ours is at 14. So just something to keep in mind. If you plan for the lowest, that's probably the safest way to do it. So in other words, you plan for the 12, which is what the strategy that we're doing here, that we laid out, is sort of focused on. So following the first boss, you have your first pretty dangerous pull. If you have a Death Knight, you can use Gorfring's Grasp to pull everything in. It will help out a lot because some of these mobs like to stay in the back. The real danger here is on the tank, generally with Rending Void Lash, which is just constantly channeled by a lot of these guys. It is interruptible, and of course you can stun them and all that, so you should make use of your stuns. This pull here, you can avoid some of the extra pulls by hugging one wall or the other, so hugging right or left, and then also using ranged interrupts or like a death grip or something like that. So we only skipped one of the possible 2 mobs we could skip here. Ideally, what you do is you interrupt both exhumers and prevent them from actually manually summoning the mobs. And then you just hug one of the walls. The right wall is the shortest path, so you generally want to hug the right wall to walk over the 2 graves that are along the right side. So essentially, instead of getting 4 spirit spawns from these 2 exhumers, you only get 2. We ended up getting 3, but it's still better than nothing. You also may have noticed that our druid ran ahead and stepped on the center plate in front of the boss. And this is just to add that mob to our cleave damage, because there's no reason not to. You don't really want to have to kill it during the boss, not because it's dangerous, just because it's better to do more AE damage while you're killing everything. Now for this boss, nothing real special going on here. When he does his breath, it can be very dangerous, so it's really important that the tank faces him away. When he does this vortex, you can generally just stay in it and keep meleeing. It's not that dangerous. Your healer shouldn't have any problem dealing with the damage on this fight. The soul phase is all the same as normal, so just burn it down quickly. Make sure you remember to click on it rather than just stand there so you can get out earlier. And otherwise, just do your best not to touch any of the plates that are around the outside of the room, any of the graves. Yeah, there's not much to say on this fight. Try not to use defensive cooldowns in this fight, because you're going to want them for the pull immediately following this, which is one of the more dangerous, scarier pulls in the zone. Void Devastation is easy to avoid as long as you have your camera zoomed out pretty far and angled down slightly. It will help you see if one of those is landing on you. And nothing else to really talk about. Like I said, it's pretty simple. So here you should get another, well, I shouldn't say should, but you may get another of the plate ads coming up. But generally the idea for this pull is to grip everything together. There is one Exhumer Roamer, which you see there I'm grabbing. That wasn't quite close enough. There we have the Spirit. So the Spirit from the back just should be pulled into the group if you do get it. And again, the basic idea here is to chain stuns, chain cooldowns. Here we elect to use Army of the Dead, which will dramatically reduce the damage taken and make this nearly trivial. So, but you still have to, not be afraid to use cooldowns. Oh, and I should mention, it's probably obvious, but the spirits that spawn from the plates throughout this previous section do not count for enemies killed. So there's no benefit to pulling extras. So here we finally get to the skip part, and we elected to do our skip here, again based on that minimum mob count, or worst case mob count. So we do a group sprint movement boost along with invis potions just before the first spider pack at the top. The idea here is then to exit the cave on the left side, and if you did it properly, you will either avoid them completely, or at worst, you will only aggro the spider lanes, but not the two large spiders. If you aggro the two large spiders, you were too slow, you didn't have enough movement boosts or whatever. But that's the basic goal. You then pull those into the first section where you fight the worm, and you'll obviously get the bats that are coming down. Make sure you handle those. Here you see my own mistake. I didn't realize I was so slow. I was snared by one of the debuffs, so I got knocked off from the breath. So be careful of that. But we were able to recover. But anyway, as for the spider skip, you're essentially skipping these spiders, and this, by doing so, if you skip the big spiders in that double pull section, then you will reach exactly 36 mobs by clearing from this point forward to the end of the zone. And this assumes, again, that you got 12 mobs total, meaning no extra void during that second pull in the zone, and you killed the first boss before she spawned a second ad. If you get either of those extras, then you will be over in mob count, and we'll talk about what you can do to make up for that, which we failed to do. We should have noticed, but that's how you can make up some time. Anyway, this boss actually can be quite dangerous if you are not careful. Again, it depends a little bit on your party composition. One thing you can do is to decide beforehand whether you're going to kill the ads or ignore them. If you have extremely high DPS and or healing, you can possibly avoid the ads, but we found it was safer and better in our case to kill them off. One thing that helps a lot, for example, is with a monk in the party, as I am obviously, you can almost touch of death one of the mobs from full health. Like, they don't have that much health, so you can kill them off after only doing a little bit of damage to them. That'll help a lot. So what we did is have two of our DPS kill one of them, and then one of our DPS and myself kill the other one. And even though I'm tanking the main worm, of course, if you find the right moment, you can time it so you can run over there even as a tank and touch of death it. Anyway, but the stability of killing them off helps a lot, because you don't really want to fail this late into the zone if you've been going through a solid run at this point. Also, try to keep track of the latest, sludge on the ground. I don't know what the name of it is called offhand, so that you don't stand in a pile that is going to disappear midway through the inhale. The other thing to be careful of, you may have seen this on Heroic, is that the inhale's cast bar duration, like you see right there, will grab you even if you go in, right at the end of it. So you have to actually wait until it's completely over and then step in. So just another reason why it's worse for melee. Anyway, but with the ads dead, it's just a matter of hanging on until the end of the fight. We could have lusted here, but we're just saving it for the last boss at this point. We're so low on mana. Alright, good, it died. So, now, again, we're at 32 of 36. Worst case scenario, or best case, I should say, you'd be at 30 of 36. And there's this 4-pack, as well as 2 more voids at the top of the ramp. So that would be the last 6 you would technically need. However, if you do have more than 30 mobs and you're pulling this pack, then what you should do, which we did not, is CC a couple of these. The corpse spiders are by far the most dangerous, so CCing those and just killing the bats would be the best case. So if we had noticed that in time, we should have CC'd both spiders, dragged the bats up a little bit, cleave them down, and then we do the last two voids at the top with the spiders CC'd. Because once you enter the last room with the last boss, it doesn't matter if you have mobs left behind. So, yeah, we're at 36 now, and we have to kill these last two void spawns because there's no other way to get into the last room. So that was, like I said, a minor mistake that did cost us a fair bit of time. Another possibility, which I don't recommend because it also requires you kill more mobs even than the minimum requirement, or the best case requirement, is to invis past that 4-pack that we just killed after the previous boss. It's just not really worth invising past such a small group, in my opinion. So finally you're on to Ner'zhul, of course, last boss. And nothing too fancy about the challenge mode version of this. Probably the most important thing to keep in mind is the damage on the tank is quite severe. He hits really hard. The other thing, of course, is facing. Try to manage the facing of the boss so that your other players do not have to think about it. So one thing to note is that the waves of the Ritual of Bones, the ads there that you see, they always spawn in the north or south side of the room. So you can face the boss to the east or the west, essentially, and not have to ever threaten the players that are dealing with those Ritual of Bones. The other thing, of course, is to make sure you plan ahead which particular Ritual of Bones your group is going to kill. So we always do the left side middle one. And then finally, of course, your ranged should try to stay away from the middle so that they're not threatening the melee or tanks with the little omen pillars that are spawning. But overall, there's, like I said, nothing real new about the challenge mode version. And if you have it available, you should use your cooldowns, your potions, your bloodlust. Well, you probably won't have potions unless you somehow used invis way earlier. It took you a long time to get here, but other than that, you will want to use all your DPS cooldowns for this boss because it's a pretty long fight. And the faster you can kill him, the fewer Ritual of Bones spawns you'll get, and therefore the, less wasted damage, essentially. So that really covers it. There's not much more to say. I think, like I said, this fight is probably, or this zone is probably somewhere in the middle in terms of difficulty. We had a number of mistakes in this run, but you can see we still got gold, although it was barely. I think we beat it by just 2 seconds. So had we improved our mistakes, we would have made it through with 30 or 40 more seconds. So anyway, that is the gold guide for the Shadowmoon Burial Grounds challenge mode. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Oh yeah, baby. Go ahead and press that subscribe button. Yeah, that feels so good, doesn't it? Hey, no, where are you going? No, come back. Oh.